We're going to talk about a potential trade target for the Broncos, along with some buzz on the special teams coordinator opening. But make sure to subscribe to the Broncos Breakdown here. We recently crossed 32,000 subscribers, so thank you to everyone who went ahead already and clicked that sub button down below. But if you haven't already, hop aboard for absolutely nothing. What's going on, Broncos country? Welcome on into the Broncos Breakdown by Chat Sports. Coming up on today's show, I want to talk about two things. One, should Denver pursue a Mark Andrews trade after the AFC divisional round between the Ravens and the Bills? There's a lot of people out there wondering, okay, will the Ravens move on from Andrews after a really poor performance and just go full on with Isaiah Likely? And we all know that Denver needs help at the tight end position. So let's discuss, shall we? We'll start with Andrews' performance against the Buffalo Bills. So he had 5 grabs, 61 yards, but some very costly plays plays he didn't make. One, the drop on the 2-point conversion. Another, a fumble earlier in the game, which led to the Bills scoring. And so here we are wondering, will the Ravens decide, hey, as Andrews gets up there in the age column and he starts to become a little bit more expensive for us, is it time to just kind of cut bait altogether and have the Bill Belichick mindset of move on 1 year too early rather than 1 year too late? Because like I said, there was the fumble in the Bills game that led to a key score for Buffalo, and then the drop on the 2-point conversion, which sent the Ravens to Cancun. So there is a lot of discussions out there about whether or not Baltimore needs to just rip the Band-Aid off a little bit with Andrews after, I would say, a completely disappointing year. He got off to a very slow start. Remember, he was not even a part of the offense for the first couple of weeks, and fantasy owners were panicking. He quietly amassed 11 touchdown grabs, a career high for him in a single season. So on one hand, it seems like a disappointing year. On the other hand, there are some numbers that say it wasn't all that bad. Here's some numbers that are important. His financial numbers. One, his cap hit this year is $16.9 million. That's a decent cap hit. It's the final year of his contract, and there's only a $5.9 million dead cap. So there are a little over $10 million in cap savings to be had if the Ravens were to move on from Mark Andrews. As for any team looking to trade for him, they're going to get a 30-year-old tight end in December who's coming off an 11-touchdown campaign, and the lasting image for the team and the fan base was 2 drops and one specifically on the 2-point conversion, which maybe is enough to just go on separate directions, separate ways, and save $10 million. If I'm the Broncos, if I'm George and Sean Payton, I'm open to trading for Mark Andrews. I know that right now his stock does not feel very high, but lots of players have really bad moments in key situations, and they bounce back from it. And I also think the Broncos would be naive to just close their eyes to a player coming off an 11-touchdown season at a position that they have really struggled with for, I don't want to be dramatic, but for like 7-8 years. I mean, if you count like Noah Fant as a good tight end, then you can kind of cut that number in half, but I don't. So I'm looking at Mark Andrews' last 4 seasons, and I see 11 touchdowns in 17 games, a 2023 season that was cut short-ish. Remember, he came back in the playoffs at the end, but missed the last third of the season. But he was on pace for a monster season of nearly 1,000 yards and nearly 10 touchdowns, if not for that injury. 2021, his best season by far, 1,300 yards, 9 touchdowns. So he's had some very, very good years, and the Broncos could use a good tight end. Plus, you got to imagine that Bo Nix would like to have a security blanket like Andrews. So here's the trade idea that I cooked up. Baltimore gets a 4th-round draft pick. Denver gets Andrews and a 7th-round pick back. That way the Broncos don't lose any draft capital from a number standpoint. They just fall back from round 4 to round 7, and they acquire a all-time great tight. I mean, all-time is a bit dramatic as well, but I think we can all agree that when Andrews is on top of things, like, he is one of the best tight ends in football. He's a top 5 tight end in football over the last half-decade plus. So I like him as a player still, and at the current moment, it sounds crazy to say that, but come September, October, people are not going to be thinking about the 2-point conversion, drop outside of Baltimore, and that's all that matters to me. So a fresh start for Andrews and a cheaper, younger tight end for the Ravens, all at the price of a fourth-round draft pick. This could be a win-win-win for all three parties. I will add that we'll learn more about what the Broncos want to do at the tight end position and just in general when the combine gets here. Between now and the combine, I don't want to say that nothing matters because there are still going to be some important scoops and leaks that come out kind of during Super Bowl week and the hangover from that. And it's only 2 weeks later until the combine is here. But when the combine arrives, that's when all 32 GMs, for the most part, are in one city. All the beat reporters, the insiders across the country, they're in Indianapolis as well. And that's when we start to get a better idea as to where players are going to go in the draft and what teams want to do. Let's say Denver has their sights set on Tyler Warren, and they are at the combine, and they learn two teams picking ahead of them really like Warren. Well, they should probably not put all their eggs in that basket. That's a bad plan. And if that's the plan, or if that's the intel that Warren or Genty or their top two guys are going to go before their pick at number 20, they may then pivot and go, well, now that we know who's going to go where roughly, and we have no shot at this player, our backup plan is let's trade for Mark Andrews. So that's something to keep an eye on when the combine gets here. For now, it's just kind of connecting dots of this team needs a tight end, this team can move on from a tight end. You can see how we cross the bridge right there. But once the combine is here, we'll have a much better idea as to what teams' goals and teams' plans are. Before we talk about the rest of today's episode, make sure you check out our sponsor, Game Time. Game Time has an awesome feature that you guys are going to love called Game Time Picks. What Game Time Picks does is it filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. I used Game Time just a few weeks ago over my birthday to see Shane Gillis live. It was awesome. He was hilarious. Big fan of him, and it was great to see him in person for the first time. And it would not have been possible without Game Time saving me a good chunk of change. So I invite everyone watching to download the Game Time app today, create an account, and use code CHATSPORTS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code CHAT Sports for $20 off. It's a great way to go catch an Avs game, a Nuggets game, or any other sporting event in your local area. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. Talking about the tight end position as a whole and building off of our combine portion of the show, here are the top 5 tight ends in this upcoming draft according to Mel Kiper and his big board. Tyler Warren and Colston Loveland are the top 2 guys in this class, but I don't think it's a big drop-off after them. So if the Broncos ultimately don't land Warren, maybe they decide to go with a different person in round 1, or maybe Warren is picked before them and they feel like, hey, it's a little bit of a reach and they don't go with Loveland, keep an eye on the last 3 players. But the priority is Tyler Warren or Colston Loveland for sure. So you can look at their numbers over the past season. Warren had an incredible year for a tight end. It also helped that Penn State had no wide receivers, so all the attention went to him on offense. Now, as for Loveland, the numbers don't look as good, and they're not as good, but it's also worth noting he was in a 1920s Michigan offense that could barely complete a forward pass. I'm more interested in Loveland's 2023 production when I evaluate him as a prospect. So, if plan A is Broncos want to draft Tyler Warren, then we're not going to see a trade for Mark Andrews. I don't think you have to invest that much at the tight end position. But if plan A is we want Tyler Warren, and over the combine, Sean Payton learns, so do the Dolphins, and they're picking before you, then you might see a pivot to Mark Andrews. Let's switch gears and talk about the special teams coordinator for Denver, because we learned about the departure for Ben Kotwika a few days ago, but a name that's on the rise is Saints interim head coach Darren Rizzi. So I want to get you guys familiar with Rizzi, who he is as a coach, and whether or not I think he's going to land in Denver over the next little bit of today's show. I will say, when it comes to the change of guard at the special teams coordinator, I think we saw Ben Kotwika get fired because the blocked field goal. Initially, in my video reacting to this, I thought, that can't be, right? one play in the middle of the season got a guy fired when Marvin Mims was an all-pro punt returner and kick returner. Will Lutz was an awesome field goal kicker. They surely didn't fire him for one moment in one game. But I started to think it over a little bit more, and I'm starting to think, no, they really might have. Because Sean Payton is probably reviewing the season, and he's looking at Mims and Lutz and going, those are two maybe individual performances. The coordinator is important too, don't get me wrong. But he might see what was a systematic failure as a special teams coordinator to not identify a major weakness in their team that was exploited by the Chiefs after it was on film for anyone in that coaching staff to correct. Because it happened over and over and over again in the weeks leading up to Kansas City. I mean, we're going down memory lane here, and I know no one wants to be reminded of this, but we can go all the way back to even week 1 in Seattle. So maybe Sean Payton looks at that and he goes, I'm still pissed about it. And I'm wondering if it was Ben who got the best out of Marvin Mims and Will Lutz, or just Marvin Mims and Will Lutz got the best out of themselves. And this is something that's holding back our team. And you parlay that with Darren Rizzi, the special teams coordinator for the Saints, who was promoted to interim head coach, who worked alongside Sean Payton, someone who Sean Payton hired to be his special teams coordinator after a long run in Miami, and he's looking at an upgrade. He's looking at someone who he thinks can do the job better. And he's not going to be fearful of, if Rizzi comes over, is Lutz going to start missing more field goals? Is Mims not going to return the kick and the punt as far? Probably not. But what Rizzi can correct is mistakes noticed on film from a YouTuber in week 1 that the coach did not pick up on halfway through the season. So, having said all that, I'm going to put my name out there right now as someone who believes Darren Rizzi is going to be the next special teams coordinator of the Denver Broncos. I think we usually see these types of firings when they're a little bit delayed from the end of the season because the coach learns, hey, there's an opportunity to upgrade at that spot in my coaching staff, and ultimately, I want to make that move right now. Before we get on out of here, I want to know who you got for the Bills-Chiefs in the AFC Championship game. We're all pulling for Buffalo. And when I say we, I mean all of America except for 2 states, Kansas and Missouri. So let me know if you're pulling for the Bills or if you got the Bills winning down below. That's going to do it for us on today's episode. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Really appreciate everyone for watching the channel and supporting us. Make sure to like the video down below if you haven't already, and I'll see you all tomorrow. And the stream?